but still very important for the market, is that IFC's fully owned subsidiary asset management company enables us to sort of syndicate equity. We do private equity fund management, and able to provide a third-party capital alongside with IFC capital. And as you can see on this graph, our investment has grown over the years. And as I said, in 2015, we invested almost $15 billion with our own money and syndication. And in terms of sectors where we invest in regions, as you can see, we are global. And Europe, Central Asia, Middle East, Northern Africa, the region where probably most of the companies here in the audience focus, we are the largest region in terms of IFC investment. Manufacturing is probably not the largest sector, but it's pretty substantive, and so still sector is part of manufacturing, and spilling over a little bit into oil, gas, and mining sector. So as you can see, we're well diversified in terms of industries and regions. And again, that's our coverage, global coverage, over 100 offices worldwide. And here, in terms of this region where we focus, our main operation center is in Istanbul, and we have a few regional hubs in Moscow, Paris, Tbilisi, Cairo, Almaty, and many more smaller offices across the region. So now, why IFC and why metal? So as I said, we do a lot of investment in the manufacturing sector and construction materials and metals specifically. And since we're not just a bank, we provide technical expertise, knowledge sharing, and we form long-term partnerships. For us, it's very important to know what's happening in the sector. And before we invest and before we approach companies, we try to take a view on the sector in general and sort of develop strategies, how we see the sector and how we see our participation in the sector. So that's how we see the metal sector nowadays and how we form our strategy in the sector. So it has been discussed already, will be discussed further in the coming days. What are the main characteristics of the metal sector, the way we view it? First of all, it's a global industry. And in recent years, in upcoming years, as we see, it's going to be driven by mostly emerging markets. Over 90% of demand comes from the emerging markets. The industry is very large, it's very capital intensive, and it's very cyclical. It has been cyclical, and the fact that crises come and go in the sector is not a surprise, and many companies are well equipped to weather the crisis. But it provides sort of the capital intensiveness of the industry, and cyclicality provides sort of a natural barrier to entry. What we witness now is the depressed market conditions, mostly coming from the depressed emerging markets. It's basically the weak growth we see in China and Turkey, and contraction in Russia and Brazil. All of this affecting the market situation and affecting financing and financial conditions of companies and capex programs of many global players in the sector. What is also important for the sector, the way we see it, that it has a very significant environmental and social impact. And it's not only about the impact itself, it's a kind of monetized impact we see from environmental and social issues. Now, in terms of taking the whole metal sector, let's talk about the steel sector. That's where we're mostly focused. So talking about the liquid steel sort of upstream production, what we see is very important is that it's mostly about cost competitiveness, because in general, liquid steel is commodity. So what's important is to be cost competitive. And it's especially important for flat steel and for export. On the downstream, the main characteristics and what we see is very important for companies to pay attention to is the management, working capital management, good distribution network, and solid brand recognition. So I guess the big M word meltdown is going to be mentioned many times these days. The industry is really in meltdown. Even though we don't have an answer to it, we don't know what the forecast is, and nobody has a crystal ball, but the fact that the industry is in big trouble nowadays, it's probably nobody questions that.